Good day. Welcome to Logistics Lens. I've lost track of which episode we are on. I believe it's 7, potentially 8. Um, and I am joined today by Bob Jarrett, CEO of Hatchway Trade Group. Hey, Bob.
Hey, good day.
How are
So
you?
I'm doing fine, and you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for joining.
How was your holiday weekend?
It was really good. Micah is swimming, which is insane. And he's enjoying himself, so we're having a good time here.
That's good. That's when all those little new things in the synapses in the brain start connecting, and the
It's
more you
pretty
get them
awesome
at
to
that
watch.
age, it's awesome.
Yeah. How about you? How was your weekend?
It was good. Just hanging around, doing a little work, prepping for the future. Trying to jot down ideas and everything, and break some bad habits.
Yeah. Well, you did mention, I feel like, a celebratory milestone of HTG. So I feel like we should share it with the people that listen to us every week.
Yes. We're in the black. Less than 6 months, and we're in the black. So that's
That's awesome. Congratulations.
yeah. Thank you. And we keep on this pace. Yeah, we're going to make one of those fastest growing company lists.
I love that. I love that. Smashing records.
We can hopefully we keep doing some good work out here. I think that these habits versus outcomes are some things. So changing habits. This is all this media stuff and social sites. It's all pretty new to me. So
Me too.
Yeah, I hadn't even really used Facebook. I mean, up until just recently, my Facebook account, I had my wife, kids, and my mother. That was
Same.
yeah. And so now I got a couple of cousins and some siblings, which is new to me. But anyways, social media has been quite the little thing here. Getting used to it and doing it consistently, I guess that's one of the things we have to do, and we have to create a good habit with that.
Absolutely.
So in order to get those desired outcomes of letting that regular work that we do just organically bring clients to us rather than us have to go look for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, for sure. It's new for me. I mean, definitely at least as consistently as I have for the last. It's been a little over a year, but I would say consistently maybe 8 months. Because there were some shifts in consistency for me, and then also building what that consistency looks like and how it works with my life. It's always something that I'm trying to be conscious of. But you're right. It in order to do this consistently, there needed to be some habits in play, like meeting once a week for an hour, you and I, to chat and get these conversations recorded, to help produce a lot of the content that we use on our socials. And then getting into the habit of repurposing it and just identifying that it was actions that needed to be taken. It was a habit that needed to be added into the routine because of what comes from it, because of the outcome it produces and how important that outcome is. And I think a lot of the times I was thinking about this today. It's another reason why I think it's so important that we check in, not necessarily because, not entirely because we need to keep track of veering off track, so to speak, but because it keeps us conscious of what's happening around us, whether it be in the industry, and are the habits that we're producing actually producing the outcome that we want them to? And if they're not, scratch it.
That's true. So, and keep finding that change, keep looking for it. I think my journey, my quest to find balance here, and this change of, you know, both of my children being out of college and it just being my wife and I, and we just crossed this 30 years of marriage this year, and
Congrats.
we're thank you. You know, trying to find the things that, you know, when you have a family, or when I had a family, it was about doing everything I could so that my wife could spend as much time with the kids as possible, because that's the way we wanted it. So for the first 15 years of our marriage, she didn't work outside the home, and I say it because she did all the work at home. I was so busy traveling and trying to make certain we had enough money for her to be able to do that. Yeah, she had both roles for quite some time there, particularly Monday through Friday, and so to find this balance between family, personal, mental health, physical health, and this journey to find balance. I think I'm having to think about all my habits and whether or not, you know, they're bad habits, you know, make for bad outcomes. And so over the last few years, yeah, I've had to get rid of some bad habits. So
I think I can speak for us all when I say, me too. Me too. And I think one of the trying to think of like what are some of the really bad habits that I've thrown out.
I've really worked on my OCD.
Yeah.
I used everything used to have to be in the right place all the time. So, you know, right down to even in my closet. So, you know, and then all the colors and, you know, in the right, they couldn't be mixed up, you know. So, and I've had to break a lot of those habits like that.
Yeah.
And it's led me to, when you get rid of the habit one at a time, for me, there's a lot of anxiety in that change. So, you know, and sometimes you take on a new habit to break the old habit, and then realize that the new habit may not be, you know, any better. So in the long run.
You just brought up something that I am remembering, which really got me thinking about habits and the way they relate to our career. Charles Duhigg, The Power of Habit, was a book that I carried in my bag for, man, I bought it. I was attracted to its bright yellow bright yellow cover at Barnes and Noble. And I picked it up off the shelf. I didn't read it immediately. It sat on my bookshelf at home. And then I read it. And I think it was 2017 when I read it. That was the first book that kind of it made me think about business, my career, and my own habits all at one time. And I think it really opened up the gate for personal development for me. But at the time, I didn't know it. Not specifically, because I thought that I was focusing more so on the business side. But it's such a good book. And it talks about the habit loop and the need to replace bad habits with better habits, because it's still going to be something that you do. So it's a matter of identifying that you're caught in the loop and then changing the behaviors to get to the desired outcome. And I learned in there's so many fascinating examples of consumerism in America and how certain, I'm telling you, forever changed my life. Even I just made a call. We're talking about toothpaste and mouthwash the other day.
I started laughing because consumerism in America, that brought up a conversation that I was having recently. So I just go ahead.
And it's so interesting, the psychology. I mean, we all know that there's psychology behind sales and stuff like that, but when the book just explores why we use certain products the way that we use them, and I was like, damn. And here I thought I was an individual, and it's so easy to pinpoint routines in our shopping. And it's a really good book. So I would recommend reading it for anybody who hasn't. But what you said reminded me of the book, because you talked about identifying your own habits and realizing that it's time to switch them out. And then sometimes the replacement is not good. And then you need to identify that it's not.
There's a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of consultants, a lot of leadership. All these people proclaiming, I don't know if they are or not, great leaders. For me, I always thought that my leadership skills, I guess, were honed when I was in the military, but that's a different type of leader, and you have to take what's going on in the economy. You have to, all these different things on how you lead. But leadership becomes a habit, and so you can get bad habits that come along with being a leader. And what was good in one economic cycle isn't necessarily good in another. When there's not very many jobs, there's a lot of people unemployed. You got your pick of the litter out there. You can just keep and sometimes test people, give people the chance, and maybe you can change people. And then honestly, that's a bad habit, because when you get in a different type of cycle where there's more jobs than there are people, then it makes it more difficult for you to keep your people when you've been that kind of a boss. I went through that in my 30 years. So so we have to adapt our habits of management, leadership, and according to the outcome, and then what's going on in the economy and going on around us. So
that leads me to like a question that I have for you. So how have you adapted your habits as you've taken on your role as a CEO of Hatchway Trade Group?
Wow. Well, to start with, I wanted to create Hatchway Trade Group, and the group part is the group of businesses working together in the trades, so that I eliminate out of the equation employees, so that what I have is, and I'm left with a bunch of entrepreneurial minded small business owners that can come together. Because when you're an entrepreneur and you're working for yourself, you're always working, you're thinking about it. When you partner with somebody, the partner should allow you to earn income off of that. Otherwise, it's not a win-win partnership. So for me, eliminating for now anyways, in this startup, and eliminating actual employees, people who are coming to work for the paycheck, has been important. But at the same time, I know in the future, it's not going to be that way. And so as we consult with and partner with other companies, we're going to have to work with that. So we have to have this understanding of who people are individually and how they work. And so for me, I think that's going to be one of those. So how long can I keep this up where I don't have any direct employees, right? So if we take each department of a company and they're other companies, and together we all own this company in a group, I think we're eliminating a lot of bad habits created by employees, but we can also feed off each other. So if we're in bad habits, like, I tell everybody, and this, if you don't like, or you have a different point of view of something than my point of view, we discuss it. And there's no, has there ever been a angry conversation between the two of us? We just throw these things at each other and we work at that. So I think being able to have these open type discussions is a good habit, where we both have our own ideas and we come to agreements. And then, you talk to me, and when I listen to what you've been saying, and then I come back, and then it helps me decide better about where I'm going. So being able to have open discussions is a great habit to form, and not, I don't want anybody to be intimidated by me. So I want to take away that intimidation factor. And I used to use it, 15 years ago and before, even maybe 10 years ago, I used to use intimidation as a tool to help get other people to work. But then, there were times when it didn't work for everybody. So that brings me back to a book that I read and lived by for a long time, a book called The 1 Minute Manager. It's a short book, but is
it a minute long?
It talks about the psychology, different personalities, and how people are and how to manage each type of different personality. And it brings it down to 5. There's probably more than 5, because, spectrums,
Yeah.
right? People fall different ways on different, and everything. So, but I thought it was a good read for me. And it was one of the first times that I had stepped away from, through that book, stepped away from just being that like drill instructor boss that I always was, where everything was my way or the highway, and allowed me to learn how to manage people differently. So, and kind of assess their personalities in order to be, and it allowed me to start changing my habits. It still took a long time to
does.
habits, because there were certain types or certain segments or certain groups of people, like truck drivers, that I treated one way as opposed to the way I would treat warehousemen or office staff.
Yeah.
So so, but I come to the realization that ultimately it's all the same. Just because they're doing a different job doesn't mean you have to treat them differently. So, and we treat everybody with that kind of respect. I've had, I don't know, 10 businesses over the years.
Would that make you serial?
Yeah, I think so. So, and so, and they've been in different, whether insurance agency, a tax service, DOT safety and compliance for truckers, taxes and compliance for owner operators, a freight broker before a freight brokerage one other time back in 2010, before HTG, so 14 years ago. And I failed at it then. I didn't have enough money. I didn't know enough about the financial side of the business in order to be able to, so that I had to go out and learn it. And then,
and that took time, right? Like how much time you said it was 15 years between then and now?
Yeah, 14 years actually,
14
2010 to 2009 to the beginning. Yeah, so 14, 15 years to get to the point where we're at today. So I had to go learn, and we talked about that before. But I had a bunch of bad habits to break in the meantime. So I had a bad habit of really enjoying bourbon, and it was a bad habit. So and so nowadays it's different in how I enjoy that. And so there's other bad habits that we have along the way, like I was talking about, how we treat people, how we talk to people, how we our biases. We have to put a lot of them to the side. I mean, the biases create habits, and so as we start trying to do away with those biases, we find ourselves coming out of certain spheres and going into new territory. And I think that constant change, constantly looking for the next thing that's going to put us on edge. I don't know, maybe I like being on edge. So, but it's important to and how we shed those bad habits. Bad habits can put us in and keep us into a place where we no longer grow.
That's true. Actually, keep you super comfortable. The mind loves being comfortable.
Yes.
And
it's comfort zone. That was what I was looking for, and you just said it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably July of last year when we first met, right? Maybe beginning of August.
Yes,
so weeks
it was
from
July.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
And everything in the chain. Both of us have been pushed hard out of our comfort zone.
So hard, just it's actually so that that's what I wanted to say. I want to say that two things. First and foremost, that changing habits takes time. And when you look at it in the last 9 years, right, or even the last 14 years, it's like an evolution of self. How we, the continuous change and review of our habits and where it gets us, to Bob 14 years ago, to Bob today. It's been an evolution of Bob, an evolution of Victoria.
Yes.
But then I also wanted to say that you brought up some habits that are pretty serious and hard to break. And I wanted to point that out because we're not here talking about habits that are surface level. It's never about the surface level when we're sitting here and we're talking. And that's what I want people to really see and understand, is that Um,
Well, that,
it's
that comes
really
back to
going.
that balance, I think.
Absolutely.
You know, when we talk about that, the it's not service level is about finding balance in all these different things, right? So when we go into a bad habit, it can take us out of balance, and that's kind of the way I try to look at it.
An idea of what they have been at this point, or maybe we don't. Honestly, that could be a thing too. Um, it does come back to balance because it comes back. It always comes back to the question of the type of life that you want to live, the type of career you want to have, the type of business you want to be a part of, and how it relates to the habits that we have every single day. Because I remember when, I guess, when I first started my career, when I was in inside sales, um, a big part of my routine, one thing that I hated at the job that I had previous to that one was that I couldn't have a routine. It was impossible. I was trying so hard, like I just coming out of school and having a schedule and scheduling down to the freaking minute. It was because I was working full time. I was going to school full time. Like I had to literally account for every single free minute that I had in order to make it work. And so I had to be very, very rigid.
Yes.
And when I got out, when I graduated from college and I got my first job, that job it was challenging, but nothing, like every day looked different. And coming from a rigid schedule to having days where I was lucky if minute by minute anything was the same.
Because you
Um,
work for that, we become discombobulated.
very much so. And especially if you're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
And that was outside of logistics and supply chain. And then I threw myself into logistics. And I was like, wow, it doesn't matter. I could be in the same place every day between the same hours. It does not matter the time, it could be so different. And so I had to switch my habits.
Yeah.
And I realize now that I'm thinking about it, some of the habits that I changed when I came into the industry was to get me through that transition. What I was dieting. I say dieting because I was dieting, even though I don't believe in dieting anymore. That's another habit that I've changed. And exercise. And that's when I started to cycle. But I would wake up, and I'm telling you, I've always woken up like really early. I would be my first class would be at like 5:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock, maybe 5:15. I don't remember. But then I would take that class, get ready, and then go to work. And then I would get to work like 15, 20 minutes early, have time to settle in. And then I'd work through to 5 o'clock, go home, and pretty much so I started to set myself into a routine. Even though there was things that I couldn't control during that 9 to 5, there were things I could control outside of it to help make that transition smoother. And my routine and habits don't really look, my life doesn't look much like that now. I still wake up early. Actually, probably the only thing that looks like that is the time that I can wake up. And and the fact that I still like cycling. So there's that. But not so much habit as it is just something I like to do at this point. But I had to make a change. I had to identify that if I was going to make it work, and that I happened to find another job that maybe wasn't as physically demanding, but was definitely mentally demanding in trying to keep up with everything that I had going on pretty much at that time. Learning, dealing with customers, angry customers making fun of me for being young and in the industry. Is like ridiculous things. Absolutely ridiculous things.
Well, you
But
know, there's a lot of us that believe that in order to become an expert, you got to put in a lot of time.
I thought about this today too. I was getting ready, and this conversation about imposter syndrome comes up all the time.
All the time.
And
Yes.
all the time. And to be honest with you, it started to come up so much in my feed that it was becoming annoying because I'm like, I don't want to hear anymore about how we all don't feel like we're enough to do the things that we do. And I'm also very annoyed that we all have the same narrative. And I'm so tired of hearing about it and perpetuating it. But I also acknowledge that it's there and it's very real. And I've had it. And a lot of the times I sit here and I started to think about the the conversation we were going to have today. And I started to think, well, what the hell makes me qualified to talk to people about their habits? Like what the hell makes me qualified to have a conversation about how we should make these considerations in our careers? And so I started to think, I'm like, how many things that we're actually qualified to do, but we tell ourselves that we're not. And so it just limits what we do in the short term and in the long term.
Right.
And would I have been qualified to have this conversation 9 years ago? Probably not. Definitely not. I don't think so. I don't think I had enough life experience.
10 years ago, I was ready to have this conversation. So,
and that makes sense. That makes sense because the trajectory was totally different. But, and that's the other part too. I remember I've always been impatient, wanting to be to the next point. I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to be in school. I wanted to get my career. I wanted to. And in that time, I've accomplished a lot. But what I missed what I didn't understand would be a lesson in my career was literally the compound of habits that would build me up to this day, 9 years and change later.
Yeah.
And as a young person who's impatient, you don't want to hear anything about habits. I didn't want to hear nothing about habits, you know? Like I don't want to hear about how small me in my early 20s, I don't want to hear about how, you know, small decisions that I make every day will compound over time and then 10 years will go by, you know? But it's really the reality of how the time is going to pass anyway. You might as well do it with quality.
Well, you mentioned that up. So sometimes those bad habits put blinders on us. And then before we know it, a lot of time has gone by and suddenly it's like we wake up one morning and we got an extra set of eyelids that opened up and we see things a little bit differently. So, and that's happened, there's a lot of times we call that an epiphany, right? So
Yeah.
How many do you really have in your life? And how can a person stay in that zone where they're in a constant epiphany or paradigm or whatever, in that constant, well, the only way to do that is to have that constant change going on for me. So
for me too.
And I've said it's happened to me a couple times where I've gotten into that groove, and it took something major to get me out of that groove and cause me to open my eyes again and see that I've made bad habits or created bad habits, and it's not benefiting me. I'm not growing anymore. So and I think that for me, I need to have something that's constantly changing me and pushing me in order to feel that growth and to feel that change and to break those habits. And because I can easily fall into bad habits or routines that then become habits that are not good for us. And that's
absolutely.
How many times have I failed in different businesses and started new businesses and helped other people start businesses. And it always seemed like the more help I gave somebody else, and I would fall into those traps where I was giving them too much and not focusing enough on me. And that's why it's taken me so long to get here to HTG, and this understanding of this idea that I don't want to be a large corporation where I have a bunch of employees and just, make millions. That's not my goal. My goal is to help people become entrepreneurs and help them build a book of business that cannot be taken away and without something radical happening, right? So I want HTG to grow, but how do I keep it from becoming one of those things? Here I am. I'm not even close to being that, and I'm worried that if things go well, constantly, that we're going to get to that point where. So that's
the only way to stay ahead of it. is to think about it all the time or often. Maybe not like don't lose sleep over it, but make it a part. Like it has to be a habit. It has to be a part of what your process is. And on that note, I will say, stay consistent, stay conscious, and make the changes where necessary.
Balance.
Yep. As it
Find the
relates to the outcomes, you got to find the balance and the habits in order to get that outcome.
So it's been a great conversation today.
I think so. Thank you so much again for joining today, Bob. And we will chat again in a week.
Will do. So